Thank you, Clint, for asking me to speak. It's always an honor to get to come try to carry the message of AA and, come back here to my hometown. I come through this building many times before I got sober, sit back here and, sit back there at the speaker meetings back then looking through a fog of smoke and going, man, what in the hell are they talking about in here? I think Bill Wilson says it best on page 8 of the big book. He says no words can tell of the loneliness and despair. When I got here, quicksand stretched all around, just like he said there. And a couple lines down, he said how dark it is before the dawn. And I think about how dark it was when I walked into these rooms of AA. This time to get sober up, and everything in life worthwhile was gone, and I was broke, and I was broke down, tired, and I was just, I didn't have any more answers, and I was going to die. I just knew I was going to die. I didn't make a change, but. We come here and we tell you a little bit about what it was like, what happened, and how it is today. My sobriety date is April 29th of 2002. And, I grew up right down the road. I grew up down in Pine Bluff, and run around. I don't see many of them here tonight, but there's a good little Pine Bluff following that I grew up with that's members of AA now. It's like every time I come back up here to speak, it's almost like a class reunion. I see a lot of them I grew up with that keep coming in the doors, But, I can tell you, I grew up down there and I was raised up. If you're from around here, there used to be a little old honky-tonk bar down there in the edge of Hoffman called the Pink Elephant, and that's where I was raised up at. My old man hung out in there and all the time, and I can remember just hanging out in there all the time on the weekends in there. They had a couple old pool tables and a old pinball machine back there in the corner, and I remember they had a couple old jars of some old pig's feet and pickled eggs. I think that stuff sat there for years. I don't know if anybody ever eat that stuff or not, but I remember seeing that stuff up there. And but I can remember hanging out in there, a lot of times on the weekends in that old beer joint, and I can remember many times waking up in the morning at the house and the old man and 3 or 4 guys would be sitting at the table still up all night, drinking, playing cards, doing whatever they were doing, and it wasn't uncommon to wake up in the morning and the old man not be there, and the old mom pissed off, and he was off somewhere else playing cards and drinking and doing what they were doing, But I remember growing up in that little town right there, and there was a handful of us that grew up there, and I run around with them guys, and I felt at home with them guys right there, and if you hang around AA long enough and you hear enough stories, you always hear that one theme, or a lot of things is I just never did quite feel like I fit in, and I fit in down there in Pine Bluff with them boys, and I fit in. I played football and baseball growing up, and I did there, but when I went to school, I just didn't ever feel like I fit in around there, and I felt like I wasn't ever good enough, and I remember in 3rd grade, I went to Aberdeen Elementary over here in Berkeley, and I did good back then on that old CAT test they used to give, and and they elected me to go to the gifted and talented class, so they sent me over to Pinehurst to the gifted and talented, and I can tell you I was by far the least gifted and talented of any of them in there, and it seemed like everybody I went to school with over there, the parents were doctors and lawyers, and they seemed like they had nice houses and nice cars, and I can remember just at an early age then feeling less than, I can remember riding the bus home at times and, living down there in Pine Bluff and getting off the bus a couple of blocks before the house and walking home because, I didn't feel like our house was as good as everybody else's house on the block. It was just like everybody else's, but, for some reason, that old mind of mine, we wasn't good enough, and it just never measured up to everybody else. But, I run around down there with them boys, and I can remember as a kid. I don't know when I took my first drink. I remember my old man. He, them boys that he run around with, and they all drink, and if he was out there working in the yard or he was playing cards or something, he'd send me to go get him a beer out of the refrigerator, and my reward was I'd get to pop the top on the beer and take a sip of it, and I can remember running around with them kids down there, I don't know, 8, 9 years old, man, and we'd sneak a beer out of the refrigerator, and one of us is steal one of our parents' cigarettes or something like that, man, we'd go out there in the woods and pass the beer around and smoke a cigarette. You know, you thought we were standing out there smoking a joint, we'd hacking and coughing and passing the cigarette around, you know. You know, I remember being probably about 10 years old, and I remember they had an old card game going on over at the house, and my man had a bunch of guys over there, and I remember he sent me to get a beer out of the refrigerator, and I went and got that beer out of the refrigerator. I remember popping the top on it, taking a swallow and sitting it down, and going back over there and getting it from him again, and just, you know, horse-assing around with him, taking his beer, and you know, I remember him looking at me, and he said, boy, one of these days I'm going to take you out. I'm going to let you drink all them beers you can stand to drink. Your head hurts so bad you don't want no more of them, you know. And you know, it took about 20 years to get to that, but that day did come, you know. You know, I remember though when I took my first drink to get drunk, you know, I got to high school when I was in 9th grade, and my parents, they actually were owners in a beach music club up in Southern Pines years back called Bostick's, and you know, I remember they closed that club up, and somewhere or another we wound up with a bunch of liquor down there at the house, and you know, I remember one of my old buddy's friends, one of my buddies, his parents had went out of town, and we all ganged up out there at his house, you know, and I'd went and robbed that old liquor closet we had downstairs and got 4 or 5 half gallons of liquor, and you know, took out there that night. And, you know, I remember a couple of things happened out there that night. You know, one, I got drunk. You know, I think we didn't know what we were doing. We were just drinking a concoction and stuff, you know, but we all got drunk and got crazy, and, you know, I got sick, showed my ass and puked all over the place, and eventually passed out. But, you know, from what I remember of it, it was fun while it was going on, you know. And, you know, the second thing that happened was I found me a little crowd that I fit in with. You know, there was about 6 or 8 of us, maybe 10 of us out there that night, you know, and we all got drunk and raised hell, and you know, but I found me a little niche right there when I got to high school that they all like to do that too, you know, and that's who I started running around with, you know. And you know, it didn't take long, you know. In the beginning it was probably just like anybody else, you know. When we got to high school, we'd go out and drink on the weekends and find us a party to go to or something like that, you know. If there wasn't no party going on here, we'd find somewhere in the woods to drink or something, you know. And you know, it didn't take long once I picked up that first drink to, you know, I started smoking grass, and you know, and it didn't take long after that, after I picked up my first drink and started smoking grass, that I started getting in trouble, you know. And you know, in the beginning, it was the simple little things that we got, the drinking underage and simple possessions, you know. And seems like as the alcoholism and the drug addiction progressed, so did the trouble I got in. It seemed to progress too, you know, and it went from the simple possessions and stuff like that to assaults on police officers, and, you know, things that I started getting locked up for. They couldn't give me pink slips, or they might have gave me one and I'd wake up in jail with it, but, you know, things that I started getting locked up for, you know. But, you know, growing up through our teenage, you know, in my teens, I mean, you know, I'm a firm believer. I found a home in Alcoholics Anonymous, but growing up, man, we did everything that was out there we could do at the time, you know. And there ain't too many things that too many 12-step programs that I don't qualify for, you know. But I found a home in Alcoholics Anonymous. But you know, going through my teenage years and early 20s, you know, once I started drinking, I got in trouble, and then you know, of course, at about 16 years old, I knew a hell of a lot more than my parents did, and they couldn't tell me nothing, you know. And you know, I remember growing up there in Pine Bluff, and me and a couple of us went down to the old Rock for a weekend, and NASCAR was in town, and, you know, I just took off and didn't say nothing, and went down there and we pulled a Wild Western that weekend. And I remember coming home that Sunday night, man, and my old man jumped on me and he beat me up pretty good. And you know, they tried to have me committed into a psychiatric ward. They just thought I was crazy as hell, you know. And so they took me up to the police station up there, and they took me on up to the hospital. And, you know, I sit up there about half the night, went on a psychiatrist come in there and give me an evaluation. And, you know, I think he come in and asked if I threatened to kill them or myself in the last couple hours or something. And, you know, they said no. And they said, well, we can't really do nothing with them tonight. We can't commit them. So, you know, he said, well, we got to take them on. So, you know, I remember we pulled out of that hospital and we were heading back to Pine Bluff. And my old man pulled right over there at the old Sand Hills flower shop out there on number 1. I just remember we pulled over about 3 o'clock in the morning, and And they said, boy, I don't give a damn where you go. Just don't ever come back to my house again, you know. And they put me out there on the side of the road. And, you know, I remember getting back up to Aberdeen. There was a couple other boys I was running around with. They'd already been booted out. And, you know, so I went there and shacked up with them for a couple of days. And, you know, eventually, a week later or so, me and another old buddy, we wound up down there on Pine Bluff Lake Road. We had this old rundown trailer. And, you know, I quit school and went to work. And, you know, by the time I got home at 4 o'clock in the afternoon, man, the party was on. You know, we had a crowd at the house, you know, and, you know, I think we probably stayed in there a year. And we got drunk and high in there every day. I can tell you that. And never did scrape up enough money to get the oil heat turned on, but we stayed drunk and high in there every day. You know, and, you know, going through the years, man, I had several stints in AA, you know. Most of the time, I'd had 3 DWIs before I was ever old enough to drink. And, you know, every time I got one of those DWIs, they'd send me on over to the through the courts and generally through, at that time, I think Sand Hills Mental Health. And ultimately, I'd come sitting here, you know. And like I said earlier, I remember sitting in these meetings, and, you know, back then they were about 3 hours long and in Spanish, you know. And I'd sit here and go, man, what in the hell are they talking about? When's this thing going to get over with, you know? And, you know, and I wasn't ready to get sober, you know. I mean, I was just getting started good. And, you know, I went through them years, and it was kind of off and on, kind of like it talks about in the big book, man. I'd kind of hold it all together. Most of the time I'd get me a girlfriend, and I'd kind of settle on down. If I had a girlfriend, I was somewhat a little more calm than I was without. And, you know, I'd settle on down there for a little bit and kind of keep it between the ditches, and then, you know, something would happen and I'd get in trouble and get locked up and all hell break loose. And then it seemed to come in waves, you know, and then the hell I got the next weekend and get locked up again, you know, and you know, get more trouble than I was ever going to get out of. And, you know, stayed on probation for years and years and years. And, you know, and then I'd settle down and kind of level off a little bit, and I'd go along there for a while and then tear it all down again, you know. But, you know, I remember those being probably about 25 years old, man, and, you know, I quit school and went to work and started building houses. I've been building houses my whole life, and, you know, started framing houses, and then by the time I was 22, I got my contractor's license, started building houses, and, you know, even in the midst of all that chaos, you know, I was building houses and making money. We built a bunch of houses back then, and we're building a lot of houses, and, you know, I remember, like I said, probably been about 25, and I remember I'd been running hard, and, you know, I'd like any good alcoholic. You know, I made more money I made, the more I drank, the more dope I did, and all the chaos that ensued with it, you know. And, you know, I remember I'd been on about a 3 or 4 day run, and I remember going over to my mama's house about 4 o'clock in the morning one morning and beating on her door and waking her up and telling her, man, I got to get some help. I got to do something. I'm gonna die if I don't do something soon, you know. And you know, my mom, for the y'all that's been around here for a while, know she worked in VR for a lot of years. She worked in the prison system, and then she got out and went to work for VR. So she helped or worked with a lot of alcoholics and drug addicts, getting out of jail, getting them in recovery houses, you know, kind of getting them set on their feet. And you know, and so, you know, I went to her and said, I got to get some help. I got to do something or I'm going to die. And, you know, I remember she set me up with old Rick Bickle over at Sand Hills or Recovery Associates over there in Southern Pines, you know, and I'd go in there and I'd see him about once a week. And, you know, he'd tell me, hey, you need to go to AA. You need to get your sponsor. You need to read that big book. You need to work them 12 steps. She said you probably need to quit hanging out in them bars and run around with them old drug dealers you run around with too. Yeah, that wouldn't be a bad suggestion. And you know, I didn't want to do none of that stuff. You know, I wasn't. I thought I was tired and I thought I was ready to make a change, but I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready to give up the lifestyle. I wasn't ready to give up them old friends that I grew up with that I just thought were my dearest friends out there. You know, I wasn't ready to give all that up. You know, and I remember too making that suggestion. He said, I think you ought to go down there to Wilmington to that treatment center down there for about 30 days. You know, and I remember thinking, man, I got 10 or 15 houses I'm building right now. I can't leave everything and go down to a treatment center for 30 days. You know, and I remember him at that time, what I thought was a smart ass comment. I remember him saying, well, you just remember anything you put for that sobriety, you'll lose it. You know, and I remember thinking, yeah, I hear you, partner. You know, and yeah, I didn't pay attention to him. And yeah, that's the funny thing about a lot of us in AA, man. I come in here and I said, I want some help. And they told me what to do, get a sponsor, go to meetings, read that big book, work them 12 steps, and get sober, help another alcoholic. And I didn't want to do none of that. You know, and that's the funny thing. We come here and we ask for help, and they tell us what to do, and we don't want to do it, you know. And I didn't want to do none of that stuff, you know. And, you know, and from there it went downhill. You know, and I'll be the first to tell you, you know, from 15 to 25, man, I'd say life was a party, you know, and drank a lot of liquor and did a lot of dope and raised a lot of hell and got in a lot of trouble, and you know, all that stuff was just kind of par for the course, you know. But you know, that it seemed like from there on, though, the kind of the bright lights and the big time started dimming out, you know, and you know, things started getting darker. You know, there was that last 5 years, and particularly that last 3 years. You know, there was a lot of mornings I sit there and I watch that sun come up with a bottle of liquor and a bag of dope. I said, "Day's the day. Man, I'm gonna do something different. I can't do this no more. I'm dying. I got to do something different," you know. And you know, I'd make it through that day and limp through that day and swear I'm going home tonight and I'm gonna eat some dinner and I'm gonna go to bed and I ain't gonna do nothing tonight, you know. And I'd limp through that day and come about 4 o'clock. We'd get off work and them boys would either drop the tailgate and get a case of beer, or I'd stop by that old watering hole on the way home and just say, "Well, I'm going there to see what the boys are doing," and just get 1 or 2 and then go on home. And you know, there I was. I found myself again that next morning going, "Man, how in the hell did I get here again?" You know, and you know, I think about in them last few years. You know, man, I'd amassed. I'd went out. You know, I'd made some money. And I went out and like a good alcoholic with a big ego does. You know, went out and I bought me a big old piece of land and I built me a big old house out there in Eastwood. And you know, I had me some Corvette and motorcycles and cars and boats, and you know, had me old stripper living in the bottom down there that had a bunch of friends that loved to party like I did. And you know, I was 25 years old, and if you looked on the outside, it looked like I had the world by the tail, you know. And you know, but I can just remember on the inside being tired, you know. And I mean, man, we didn't run out of money, and we didn't run out of dope, and we didn't run out of liquor, but it was just tired. I just remember getting tired, you know. And I can remember thinking, man, if I just had a little old house with a wife and a couple little kids and that little old white picket fence, you know, man, everything would be fine. I'd give up all this shit just to have that and have some peace of mind and some ease, you know, because that's what I was looking for, that peace of mind, a drink and a drug at the time, you know. And it didn't matter. I couldn't drink enough liquor and I couldn't do enough dope to find that peace of mind that I was looking for, you know. And you know, in the big book it talks about that alcoholic thinking becomes the only normal way of thinking. And man, my world condensed down to a handful of drunks and drug addicts that lived like I did, that drank liquor the way I did and did dope the way I did. And you know, growing up, I run around with a bunch of friends that they like to go out and party and drink, have a good time, raise some hell. But you know, hell, they all got in their 20s and they kind of settled down and you know, got married and had kids and started raising families and went out and become productive members of society. You know, and I was still running around like I was 17, 18 years old. You know, drinking and doing dope all the time. And you know, and it's hard to run a successful business when you live like that too. But you know, I remember them last couple of years, though, can't tell you how many Thanksgivings, how many Christmases, how many mama's birthdays that, you know, I stopped by that old bar to get a drink, and shit, I didn't come home 2 or 3 days later and never even make it home for Christmas or never even make it home for Thanksgiving or mom's birthday. I was supposed to take her out to eat, and, you know, I'd stop by that bar just to get a drink that afternoon, and we'll go and get showered up and take mom out for her birthday and have plans and, you know, never even show up, you know. And, you know, I can remember there at the end, you know, being in that big old house out there and being on a 2 or 3 day run, and everybody after I think we just got cell phones back then, or had them for a little bit, and the old phone, I'd be cut the phone off after a day or two and held up in that house or over at somebody's house. But I remember being held up in that house, and you know, after they couldn't get me for a couple of days, and they'd come out there and start looking for me, you know. And I can remember being 30 years old and a grown man and going in there and getting in the closet and closing the door and turning the lights off and just getting in the closet and in there hiding. Because I didn't want nobody to find me. I didn't want nobody to see me. I didn't want nobody to see what I'd become, you know. And you know, I can remember many times doing that. But I can tell you that then, I remember right before I got sobered up, my old man, he had a stroke. And I remember the night before he had a stroke, he was going to come over and he wanted to come over and, do something. I can't remember, watch a ball game on the TV or something, and I just told a lie like I always did, I got somewhere to go, I got something planned, I didn't have nothing to do. I just didn't want him coming over and interfering with me and what I planned on doing, and I remember he'd had that stroke and paralyzed him, and they put him in the hospital for, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks or something like that. And then they were going to move him down into the rehab for physical therapy because he was paralyzed. And, I remember him calling me up and one said, "Can you get by and get me a shaving kit and some underwear and sweatpants and stuff like that?" And I remember thinking, yeah, I'll go by and get all that stuff for you, and I had all intentions on doing all that, and I got off work and I went on by the old bar and I stopped to get me a drink, and I don't know why, but I can vividly remember that next day, 10, 11 o'clock, sitting over to Deucy's house, still drinking and doing that other shit, and and just the guilt and the shame, of just knowing, man, I can't even do the simple things like get some clothes over there to him, and wasn't long after that it was his birthday. We had a little party out there for him at the hospital, a little surprise party. My brother and a couple of friends come in town, and we went over there and did a little birthday party for him that night. I think it was on a Saturday night. And, when that got over with, we went on out and to the old watering holes like we always did, and, and I remember we went out and got blistered that night, and me and my fiance at the time, we got home 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and I don't know what happened. We got a big fight that night, and man, I beat her about damn near to death, and pulled out a gun, and I shot the house up, and I can vaguely remember going there and sitting down on a chair, and just putting that shotgun under my chin and just sitting there and crying and trying to get enough courage to pull the trigger on that thing, and I thank God I didn't, but I passed out, and I remember my mom, and I guess you called my mom and my brother, and they come over there sometime 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, and I remember him coming in and getting that gun from me, and I remember getting up, and I remember crying, and I remember telling my mom, "Hey, take me down to that treatment center down there in Wilmington they talk about. Take me right now." Like, I said, "I'll go right now, and I'm gonna drink liquor, and I'm gonna do dope all the way down there." But because if you let me lay down and go to sleep in the morning, there'll be some reason why I won't go, just like I always have. And that's what we did. We got in that car and we went to Wilmington, and we drove on, got down there that morning, and went over and tried to get in that treatment center, and they were full and wouldn't let me in. So, but they told me if you wait till the morning, we got people leaving today, and we can get you in there in the morning. And so we went on back. My brother actually lived in Wilmington at the time, and we went back over to his house, and I laid down and passed out for a while, and I remember coming to that afternoon, about 3 or 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and all I could think about was, man, what the hell have I got myself into here now? How am I going to get back home? I done got down here and got trapped and said I'm going to get this treatment. What the hell am I going to do to get back home? And, and I went out and had my last beer that night. I went to some old beer joint down there on Market Street, man. I went there and I ordered a beer with my brother's roommate, and I remember drinking about half of it, and I just remember saying, man, I'm done. I said, I don't want no more. I've had enough, and I'm done. I just felt like I was going to die if I didn't change. And, I went in that treatment center, and I guess I was in there probably about 2 weeks, and, I don't know, I guess maybe God granted me that moment of clarity you hear them talk about in here. I remember just for the first time in my life, I was able to look back and see the 15 years before that, everything I did and everybody I hung out with, and everywhere I went, it all revolved around drinking liquor and doing dope, and I remember staying in there, and, I remember the thing that closed me off to this program with all these years was that God word up there. I remember sitting in here back in the day, looking up there and seeing God up there, and, in my mind just closing up. I didn't know what God had to do with me not drinking liquor, and I wasn't looking for God, and, I remember sitting in that treatment center, and they were in there doing their 4 steps and 5th steps in 30 days, and I remember telling that counselor, I was like, man, I don't think this stuff's going to work for me, because I ain't come to believe in no power greater than myself yet. And, I remember her just saying, hey, you just hold on and do what you're supposed to do, and if you do what you're supposed to do, the time will come. And, I got out of that treatment center on Memorial Day, 2002, and that old fiance that had beat up so bad, she come there and picked me up. I remember she picked me up about, I think I got there about 12 or 1 o'clock, and we were coming back up here. And I remember she saying, "Hey, old Pew and all them boys over there having an old pig pick, and they want you to stop by, and you got to drink. Maybe we stop by and check on them, though." And I remember thinking, yeah, it sounds like a pretty good idea, and I contemplated that for a good 2-hour ride all the way back up here, and thinking, I knew it probably wasn't a good idea, but I still wanted to go by and see the old crowd, and and I don't know, maybe that was the first sober, rational decision I made that Memorial Day, but I went to my first AA meeting outside that treatment center over at the Primary Purpose Group that night, and I come back here and I had to close out a few things I had going on, and to be honest with you, I made a mess of business and made a mess of things around here, and that old pride and ego, I wanted to actually go hide out a little bit, and so I wound up moving back down to Wilmington. I moved in a recovery house down there, and I got away from here, and I moved down there, and I got me a sponsor, and I started working them steps, and I remember the first thing I asked that sponsor was, what about this power greater than myself, or this God thing they talk about in here? I didn't grow up going to church, and I didn't grow up praying, and that's what my mind closed to all them other years, sitting in here. That's why I couldn't hear the message of AA, because I didn't want to hear nothing about God. And that was my question for that sponsor. I was like, how do you find that God of my understanding? And I remember he said, well, I want you to start praying. I want you to get up in the morning, I want you to get down on your knees, and I want you to ask God to help you stay sober for today. And I want you to go to work, do what you got to do, go to your AA meeting, stay sober all day. At the end of the day, before you go to bed, I want you to tell God, thank you for keeping you sober all day. I remember thinking, well, that sounds pretty dumb, but I'll do it, and I can remember being in an old recovery house and getting down on the bed, it was an old rundown recovery house, and hell, half the doors wasn't closed and whatnot. And I remember one room I was staying in, and I'd get down there at the foot of the bed, and I'd have to get my foot cocked over there to hold the door closed. So didn't want nobody coming in there and see me down on my knees praying, and I'd say them prayers, and I did like he told me to do, is all I can tell you. And I remember I've been sober about 5 months, and I remember sitting over there one week reading that big book with him and asking about that. What about that praying and asking God to help me stay sober? Does that stuff really work? He said, well, how long you been sober now? And I was like, about 5 months. He said, you've been sober 5 months before? And I said, no. And he said, well, there you have it. It's working for you, ain't it? And I was like, the light bulb kind of went off. I said, I guess it is, and I worked them steps. I worked them steps with that sponsor, and that 12 steps says having had a spiritual awakening as a result of these steps, and I don't know when it happened. That obsession to drink was removed. I can't tell you what day. I can't tell you what time the changes started happening, the other people around me, my parents, my family, they seemed to change as long before I did, I just did what I was told to do. I worked them steps with that sponsor. I went to AA meetings, I read that big book, and I did the things they asked us to do in AA, and lo and behold, my life changed, it changed for the better, I can tell you this, AA is the greatest gift I've ever been given, by far, and I think about, through the years of being sober and, working them steps, gaining that God of my understanding in my life, something that I didn't have when I got to AA. Today I have that. I have a belief and a relationship with God today that I have to work on a daily basis. It's like Clint was talking about, it don't really matter how long it's been since I've had a drink of liquor. I can tell you this, if I'm not spiritually fit, man, I revert back to the way I am. I'm wired to be restless, irritable, and discontent. Man, I'm selfish. I'm self-centered. I'm impatient. I'm intolerant. That's just the way I'm wired, and without God in my life, man, I let that old pride and ego take over and get back in, and I revert back to that way of life that makes things hard for me to live that way. Man, if I'm doing AA and spiritually content, I can let everybody around me live the way they're supposed to live without me trying to run the way they're supposed to live, and through coming in here though and working these 12 steps, the gifts, I remember sitting in that treatment center, man, I was 30 years old, and I remember thinking, man, what am I gonna do the rest of my life? Man, I'd be better off dead. You know, all I could think about was, man, my life's over. I'm never gonna have any fun anymore, and I don't know what I'm gonna do, you know. And you know, I think, you know, you hear the sayings in here all the time. You know, if you come in here and you said what you wanted out of AA, and you know, you would in a year's time you would shortchange yourself, you know. And I certainly, yeah, I could have never imagined the gifts of sobriety, you know. You know, and it took me a while, don't get me wrong, to realize what a gift of sobriety is, you know. I mean, in all reality, I was probably sober 6 or 7 years before I realized what a gift of sobriety. I just kind of remember thinking, you know, how naive I was when I got sober. You know, I just kind of thought, hell, we'll all get sober and we'll all live happily ever after together, you know. And you know, what I found is by coming in here, it's just like you hear in these AA meetings. AA will give you a life, they'll take you right on out of here. You know, we get successful. I mean, we make, maybe some of us start making money. Maybe some of us start having families, you know. You know, we get busy. You know, I got several, a lot of people that come in here strong, and you know, and then good things happen to them, you know, and they got too busy for AA, and then they went on out and got taken out, you know. And you know, so you know, for me the key has been, though, I can tell you since the first year has been working with other alcoholics, you know. Is sponsoring guys and sitting down in that truck and reading that big book with other alcoholics and watching that light come on in their eyes. You know, they say that you know, there is no better feeling. You have to keep it, you got to give it away. And you know, I can't describe it, but I can tell you that has been the one steadfast thing in the last years that you know, I watch other guys that have got busy, and you know, once we get away from here and we quit giving back, you know, it seems to get taken from us. But you know, I've in the last few years, you know, I've sit back and looked at the, you know, the ones that I got sober with, and like I said, it seems like they all do the same thing. You know, it's a constant giving back, you know. And I'm thinking back, you know, and just that, you know, I can tell you probably in the years of sobriety, and this is where the God consciousness and the that plays in. You know, at 15, I can tell you this: at years 15 in my sobriety was probably the hardest year I had. And you know, on the outside, man, we were busy with work. Probably made more money I've ever made in my life. Yeah, I got 3 kids now, and you know, man, they're playing soccer and football and all that stuff, and I'm tied up with going home and, you know, taking them kids to soccer and doing football practice and going to games on the weekend and travel soccer and all that stuff. And you know, I've got quite a few guys I sponsored from probably 3 years up to 13, 14 years, you know. And you know, them guys are good. They call me when their ass is on fire, and they keep touch, you know, about once a month or something like that. But you know, I got in a spell there where I got busy and all that stuff, and I had a couple of guys I was reading the book with, and they went out and they got drunk, you know, and I didn't pick nobody up. And you know, I was still going to meetings here and there. You know, I was praying here and there, but you know, man, I got miserable. You know, I let it go on. I remember when I got 15 years, man, I didn't even go to my home group and pick up my shit. I just didn't want to go. I don't know what I was. I kind of got some kind of rebellious state in me, and I was unspiritual, and I didn't want to hear what the hell they had to say in AA. And you know, I didn't want to go get my chip. And you know, and I can remember getting miserable. And like I said, if you looked on the outside, man, everything looked great. You know, built a brand new house and got 3 beautiful kids and a beautiful wife, and business is good. And man, I was falling apart on the inside, you know. And you know, I can tell you this: I remember one Monday morning waking up, man, and man, the fear was on me. You know, I don't know why, but the fear was on me. I didn't even want to get out of bed. And you know, and I remember rolling out of that bed on my knees that morning and crying and praying to God, man, God, I got to have some help. I got to have some help, man. I can't go on like this. And you know, I remember even thinking then, you know, man, shit, this is what sobriety's like, man, I'd be better off. I was at that point again where this life ain't good right now, you know, and, you know, I rolled out of that bed on my knees and I prayed to God for some help, and, you know, God works in mysterious ways, man. It wasn't, that was on a Monday, and on a Tuesday, I get a call from a lady about building a house up here, and I go sit and meet that lady, and we get to talking, and she's from Wilmington. The next thing you know, we kind of rattle off a few names that we know. Then the next thing you know, she goes, well, hell, I'm in AA, and I've been sober 30 years. And I'm like, shit, really? You know, we sit there and talk for, you know, probably, you know, an hour then about AA, you know, and the next thing you know, she says, you know, and I joined the Bass Home Group up there, and I got a chair this month, and I need somebody to come up there and speak for me next week. Can you do that? You know, and I was like, yeah, I'll be glad to, you know, and, you know, and it was just weird how, I mean, and I hit my knees on a Monday morning and asked God for help, and Tuesday I get a phone call from a lady up here. Next thing you know, I'm in a AA meeting speaking the following week, you know, and, you know, you look back on them little gifts like that right there, you know, and it's an eye-opener, but, you know, I mean, what it all boils down to is, man, you know, hanging out, if AA is the best thing that's ever happened to me. You know, in one of my daily reflections in the morning, that 24-hour book says us alcoholics have been given the gift of two lives. You know, that first life of drunkenness and all that stuff, and then a second chance at life. You know, and you know, I look at that second chance, or this second chance at life, and you know, it is a gift. You know, when I think back in these years of getting sober and being able to be a dad and a husband, a good employer, you know, and that's what I found these days. I mean, that's what I want to do. You know, I don't care about being the soberest one in AA. I want to come in AA and I want to do my part. I want to help alcoholics where I can. You know, but what I really want to do is I want to be a good dad. I want to be a good husband. I want to be a good employer. You know, I want to do them things that I wouldn't or wouldn't have been able to do if I wasn't sober. You know, about 4 years ago, my old man passed, and you know, being sober, I was able to bury him. I was able to pay all his bills, pay his funeral, be there for the family, do all the things that, you know, you're supposed to do as a productive member of society and as a family. You know, before I got sober, hell, I couldn't even get him a pair of underwear to the damn hospital. You know, and I was able to bury him and take care of the family and do all that stuff. So, yeah, those are just some of the gifts of sobriety. You know, and you know, this is the best thing that's ever happened to me. You know, I can tell you that. You know, if life wasn't better not drinking, I'd be drinking. You know, nothing stops me from leaving out of here and going by that store and getting me a case of beer or whatever I want. Other than today, I just don't want to do that anymore. And that's that spiritual awakening it talks about, that personality change in the Appendix B. You know, them things that used to be the guiding force in my life that controlled everything I did. You know, they've been taken from me. You know, and you know, today I have a good life. You know, I have a better life than I could ever imagine. So, you know, the message of AA is always hope. You know, if you're in here and you're new, it doesn't happen overnight. You know, we all want to walk in here and we want all this stuff. You know, I remember getting out of that damn treatment center, coming back up here, and hell, I thought they was going to have a damn parade for me because I quit drinking, you know, and everything was going to be grand and everybody's going to love me again, and you know, everything was going to be fine, you know, and, you know, it didn't happen overnight. You know, it didn't. I just come in here and I did it a day at a time. You know, I got that sponsor. You know, worked in 12 steps, and slowly something in my life changed, you know, and, you know, it's been a good change. So anyway, the message is hope. If you're in here and you're just getting started, that's what we do. We put one foot in front of the other, do it a day at a time, get you a sponsor, follow them suggestions, you know, and you wait for that miracle to happen. You know, and it will if you want it. You know, just like it says in the sea, God could and would if he sought. You know, we come in here and that's what we do. We seek God on a daily basis, and you know, we try to live a spiritual life and try to help others where we can. Appreciate you guys letting me share for you.